Hey everybody, how's it going? So today's video I wanted to do on addiction and hitting rock bottom. It's close to about the 3-year anniversary of me receiving an email from a friend about the passing of another friend under sad circumstances. So this is something that I wish I had seen differently a long time ago. There's this saying that it can often not be worthwhile to try and help someone until they have hit rock bottom, whatever their addiction is, whether their addiction is to alcohol, whether their addiction is to cocaine, whether their addiction is to gambling, whether their addiction is to leasing or borrowing luxury items that they cannot afford based on their financial position in life and then screwing themselves repeatedly. There are many different types of addictions in the world, and they tend to share a couple of common characteristics. But certain addictions are addictions that are very difficult to recover from if you hit rock bottom. Because rock bottom for certain addictions may mean you are in a poor place financially. Addiction in certain areas may mean that your relationships suffer or your relationships are terminated. But in other cases, rock bottom can mean death. So if some people will not seek help and you believe that you cannot help them until they hit rock bottom, that may mean that what you're actually saying is that you cannot help them until they are dead. And that may not be what you think you're saying or what you meant, but it can be the reality as I have experienced in my own life. So there was someone who was a good friend of mine. I knew him for about like 8 or 10 years. And he worked in the building that was next to the building that I was working in at this recording studio. And he was that stereotype of the guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, New Yorker. He knew everybody on the block, and he was as nice as can be to everybody that he met. He gossiped a lot. He really dug. He wanted to know, what made people tick. Why did people think things the way they do? He was a very nice guy, not a hateful guy at all. He was infinitely curious about everything, and he was very helpful to just about everybody. If you needed help or if something was wrong, he was more than happy to take an hour or so out of his day to help you out for free if you needed, help with maintenance on something or help, moving something or anything like that. And he would never ask for money for any of these things. He just kind of liked being one of the crew. And he was very helpful to me in this video that I did on the $30,000 pocket dial. So I did this video called the $30,000 pocket dial I'm getting old, like 7 or 8 years ago now. And I was talking about how I had an office space that was I lost because my phone pocket dialed the manager of that space when they changed in the studio, changed management, and I was telling my roommate at the time what I thought of this person. And it was one of those things that would have been best if my phone had not pocket dialed him. I was cleaning my bathtub and my shower up, and there was a little water on my phone, so right after I got off the phone with him, it redialed him. And yeah, that was bad. I used to have a free office space in exchange for fixing stuff at the studio, and after that, I no longer did. And he was able to find me the space next door because he knew the owner of it, and he talked me up to the owner, so I didn't have to pay a security deposit, which at the time would have been a serious kick in the balls for me. And I didn't have to go through the whole application process for everything. He just I gave him a check, he gave me keys, I got in, it was great. And he eventually started helping me out with shipping. So this was before I had employees. This was back when I was just literally working by myself. And if I needed help, I just kind of go, lunch is on me at Amadeus if any of you want to pack some boxes or anything like that. And if the people that were my friends who were in the room would just laugh and happily oblige because they'd see that I was suffering at the time. And he eventually wound up becoming an official employee. And he was one of the fastest people at packaging boxes that I had ever seen. Very fast, very energetic, very on point, very fast at packaging boxes. And at some point, he stopped showing up on Mondays. We would call him, and he would answer and he would apologize, but it was consistent. He didn't show up on Mondays. Eventually, he wouldn't answer the phone on Mondays, even to apologize for not showing up. And then he wouldn't show up on Tuesday or pick up the phone on Tuesday. And at some point, he stopped even coming to work to pick up his check. And this was the point at which we started to grow concerned. He came in one day and he had large bags under his eyes and a very, very severe sniffling problem, at which point we had to talk with him, and then I had to talk with him on my own. He was selling drugs, and he claimed that he wanted to test the quality of what he was selling. So he sold weed, which I genuinely didn't care about at the time. I'm not going to judge you if you smoke weed or sell weed. You're allowed to go down the block. You can get wasted. You could spend $50, drink a container of alcohol, which is defined as poison to the body, and nobody cares. I'm not going to judge you for weed. But you would say, I have these people from Wall Street that will ask me if I can get them some coke, and I just want to make sure what I'm getting is good quality because they're paying a lot for it. And it's like, it's not even about whether you've convinced yourself that that's true. Do you think anybody else is going to believe that when you've missed work repeatedly and you show up looking like this sniff? Like, no. My friend has seen way too many cokeheads in his life, and no. That's BS. And we tried to work with him on this, and we eventually he just stopped showing up altogether, and I was unable to. I bought into the idea that I should not push harder to help my friend. I should not push harder to see if I can get him to change his ways or to get some help, because I believed in that idea that after enough people told me that you can't help someone until they hit rock bottom. It's just not going to happen. So he eventually winds up in prison, and he winds up in prison. And he gets out. He gets out of prison, comes to my store one day, and he leaves a note. And I meet with him, and I talk, and I notice that, he's on a path of doing things better, but there are certain things that just didn't change, that needed to change in order for me to consider having him here again. And eventually, I get an email from my friend saying that our friend had died of natural causes. Now, people of the socioeconomic status of my friend here are not exactly the people that I imagine get the most accurate of autopsies done, nor do I imagine that the most of effort is put into the autopsies for these individuals. That being said, I sincerely doubt that someone in their early 40s with no diseases, no viruses, no pre-existing conditions, dies of natural causes after an encounter with a long-term cocaine problem. I'm not a medical professional, not a doctor, but I can put two and two together here of why this person died in their early 40s of natural causes after everything that I had witnessed. And the problem here is I believe that there's nothing I could do until you hit genuine rock bottom. For some people, rock bottom is the loss of their relationships. For others, it's the loss of their job. For others, it's when they are in prison. And for others, it is their death. You cannot wait until someone hits rock bottom, because rock bottom is literally their death. So what I want to talk about here are certain things that you can tell for all different types of addictions that I think are common to many different types of addictions, from people that I've known as friends and family members that have suffered with such addictions, that will allow you to kind of tell if someone is right about to hit that rock bottom before they hit there. Because again, if we're talking about a gambling addiction, you may lose all your money in your relationships. But if we're talking about a drug addiction, rock bottom is death. Rock bottom in this case is death. I mean, technically it could be with gambling too if you borrow too much money from the wrong people, but let's just keep that to the side for the time being. There are a few things that I think you can tell that go with this theory that Eli the computer guy has, which is the idea of the slope. He's always looking at the slope. So he used to have a professional IT job as a professional IT consultant, and he says that he made good money doing it. And when he posted his videos to YouTube, he made 0, then he made 100, then 2, then 4, then 8, then 12, and around the time that he hit $800 or $1,200, he quit his normal job. And from what he describes, his wife gave him that the stink eye, because you're not gonna feed a family and pay a mortgage on a large house off of $800 a month. But he saw the slope. He saw that it was doing this. And once you're on this side of the curve, even if you're not here yet, you know where you're going. So there are certain things that I think you can do to tell if you, as an addict, are an addict and on your way to rock bottom, or that other people can do before you actually hit it, so that they know this is the point at which I don't care if I have a conflict with my friend. I don't care if I lose my friend, my friendship with my friend. I'd rather do that than not say anything at all. And admittedly, I very firmly regret 2 instances in my life where I did not speak up because I was afraid of pushing boundaries, or I just thought there was no point to it. Because at the end of the day, death really is the rock bottom, is what I've learned. So the first comes to lying. Now, many people don't lie to others. What they do is they lie to themselves. They believe the lie, going full George Costanza with it, and then they tell others the truth as they see it once they believe their lie. So it's easy for me to say, well, once you're lying, that's how you know that you have hit rock bottom, or that you're on the way, you're on that little slope section to hitting rock bottom. How do you really tell? How do you short circuit this if you're lying to yourself and then you believe it? One way to do that is, what are you hiding from others? So, for instance, if you have a gambling addiction, are you saying that you're going to meet friends when you're actually going to a casino? Are you telling people that you're going out to the park when you're really going to play cards and bet 5 or 6 figures on it when you're most likely going to lose? If you live with someone and you are gambling stock options, and investing is one of the worst when it comes to this, by the way, because what people do is they see, if you're going to a casino, you know what the fuck you're doing. But it's harder to lie to yourself when you're in a casino. It's very easy to lie to yourself when you open up your Robinhood account or whatever, and you buy options that expire in a week just because you think earnings are going to go up, and you put 50% of your money in. You can kind of trick yourself into believing that's investing just because of the name of the website and everything. But if that's on your screen, and your significant other or your kid or your parents come over, do you minimize the window? Do you immediately open a new tab so that they can't see it because you don't want them to see it? If you are hiding what you are doing, then you have to ask yourself, why are you hiding it? If you are drinking, if you're a normal drinker, you may not hide it, but if you are an alcoholic, okay, well, why am I placing alcohol in these weird places? Why am I hiding it inside of a cookie jar? Why am I putting it somewhere where I think other people won't see it? Are you telling people that you're drinking amounts that are different from what you're actually drinking? Are you hiding what you're doing? If you're hiding what you're doing on a regular basis and you notice it and you're being sneaky about what you're doing, really question, am I telling myself the truth about why I'm doing what I'm doing? When it comes to drinking, I've heard people say, well, I am a very shy person. I need to do this to be social. When people do cocaine, they may say, well, I'm testing it for a client, or I just like the feeling of energy it gives me. When they are gambling, they may say, well, I really, really want some money, and I want to save because I have this idea for a house, or I have this idea for a car. I want to save for my son's future. But all these things tend to have something in common, which is that the reason you say you're doing it is not the actual reason you're doing it. It's often the reason you're doing it is to get that little kick of dopamine that comes from the feeling you get when you take the drug, or when you make that stock trade and you see the line go green a little bit, or that excitement you get from that feeling of fear when you buy the option, you see it drop by 50%, and there's that fear of losing everything. It's kind of like that roller coaster ride that if you don't get excited by things that used to excite you, and this excites you, you're doing it for that. You're doing it for that kick of dopamine. People lie to themselves all the time about the reasons that they do the things they do, and what I found is that it's that little kick of dopamine, which goes into the next point, which is the next point is when you don't find the things that you used to do fun anymore. So the way that this all works in the head is, the dopamine receptors, and again, I'm not going to pretend to be a neurologist in any way, shape, or form, or a psychiatrist, but the very, very basic, simple down version of it is when you do something that is in the right direction, you may get a kick out of it. If you help someone and in the way that they weren't expecting, and they say thank you and they show you the way you helped them, kick of dopamine. When I fix a board that Apple said cannot be fixed, and an Asset Genie said cannot be fixed, and I figure out the problem, and I'm able to fix it, and the customer and I'm able to figure it out on my own, and I see the fan spin, I get excited. That is a kick of dopamine. But the thing is, when you start overloading those dopamine receptors, whether it's through drugs or whether it's through gambling, or the high that you get when you gamble and you may actually win that first time, and it makes you what happens is you need more of it in order to get that kick. And once that happens, you're not able to do the things that you used to enjoy anymore because you don't enjoy them. You may have enjoyed driving, and now you don't find yourself driving as much. You may have enjoyed flying your drone in your backyard, and now you notice you haven't picked it up for 6 months. You may enjoy, let's say with me, I love working on messing with my electric bike. If I were to go outside one day and just say, I just don't care about this thing anymore, that would, that could be a sign. When you notice that you don't find the things that you used to find fun anymore on a regular basis, this is another sign that you may be headed towards that rock bottom. When you are seeking that out of whatever it is you're doing that you may argue is not an addiction when it actually is. The next thing that you could typically tell is a sign of you're close to that rock bottom point is a complete lack of confidence in yourself. Whether you went out drinking and you realize that your routine and you're thinking about how you've made an ass of yourself and you made an ass of yourself for the third or the fifth or the sixth time in a row, and now you're walking around with this negative self-talk throughout the day, and you're thinking about what you did and saying, hate myself. Or if you are a gambler and you are, you buy these options the day before earnings, and like, I don't know, you should have bought puts instead of calls, or you were up and you didn't sell when you were up, or you were up and you sold when you were up, but you could have been even way more up if you had waited and you didn't wait, and you're saying, damn, I wish I had the balls to stay in, or damn, why was I so greedy? I should have got out. Or you notice that every decision you make is the wrong decision, and it winds up eating away at you to the point where you just feel like a failure at life. And one of the way I remember discussing this in this Wall Street Bets post that I made a video on a few weeks ago was where someone was actually up from where they were initially. They made money, but then they lost a lot of the money they made, but they were still up, and they felt that way. When you notice that you won and you still lack confidence because you didn't win as much as you could have won, that's when it really starts to become an issue. When you're walking around with that sense of confidence, whether you are in a negative relationship, a very toxic, abusive relationship, whether it's a cocaine addiction, whether it's gambling or that general lack of confidence in yourself before you actually hit the rock bottom, before your wife divorces you, before you die of a drug overdose, before you wind up in prison, before you lose all your money, is part of it. And the next is when you realize that when you unexpectedly feel good and you notice that you did not take part in whatever it is. So let's say you did drink for 2 or 3 days because you couldn't, and for those 2 or 3 days, for some reason, you feel somewhat happier, and you just don't know why. Or you didn't go to the casino, or you didn't bet on the horse race, or you didn't spend time with a particular person that is toxic and that you can't get out of a relationship with for whatever reason. And you just notice, I'm just kind of happier. I'm happier today. That's another way to tell that you are on this slope to the rock bottom. And the whole hope here is that if you can catch yourself, or if you can catch the person that you know while they're on that slope, it's better than catching them at rock bottom. So the idea that you have to wait for someone to hit rock bottom. But again, once they're past a certain point, once the person is past a certain point, it is almost certain they are going to hit rock bottom. But again, since rock bottom in many cases can actually be death, I would argue that it is best to do something before then. Now, obviously, it's easy for me to say this, hindsight being 2020, that I should have said something more. I should have risked him saying, screw off, this is my own life, fuck you, you're not the boss of me. It's easy for me to say that in hindsight because I have the knowledge in 2021 that what he was doing actually led to his death, and that made a lot of people sad. The other time this has happened to me was with someone that I knew who was in a bad relationship. So there was a friend of mine in high school who every now and then would talk about their relationship. I would talk about, my relationships or what I was going through. She would talk about hers, and her problems always sounded like I would complain about something, and then she would complain about something, and it's like, dear God, I can't believe I'm complaining at all. And, we sat next to each other in an English class, and we would talk on the way to the bus every day, and then we'd go about our day and our regular life. And, I gave my opinion once or twice, but I didn't push it because I thought, it's not my job to tell someone, it's not my job to make decisions for someone. And then I remember reading the news while I was working at the studio in 2008 that this one friend had their throat sliced and then were buried while still alive by that guy. And again, it's one of those things where, people tell me, well, they're not going to get it until they hit rock bottom. You can't, you're not going to change their mind. They have to figure it out for themselves. Again, it's easy for me to say that because I know what the outcome is, but that being the outcome, I remember taking a light bulb in the room, and I remember throwing it at the wall and breaking it because I was angry, because I kept saying to myself, I should have said something. I could have done something more. I could have said something more. I didn't want to lose the friendship that I had with the person that I shouldn't even, it was more of an acquaintanceship than a friendship, but I didn't want to be on bad terms. So I never really pushed it. Like, I would give my opinion, I would say what I thought, and I would let that be that. But then I kind of wonder, what if I pushed more? What if I did something else? What if I said something else? What if I tried to, I don't know, get your friends to, have a talk with me so that we could all talk to you together or something? Like, what if I had done more rather than just admit this defeatist idea that if when you have to wait for someone to hit rock bottom in order for them to change. Maybe they wouldn't have had their throat cut and then tossed into a ditch. No, it's depressing. I don't have a conclusion to this video. I don't script these, so it's very surprising to me when I actually am able to create a coherent thought. But here I don't really have a conclusion to this video. I suppose my conclusion would be, don't wait until rock bottom to potentially challenge your relationships when you notice that someone is on a downward spiral. And if you are on a downward spiral yourself, many people say they're going to wait until they hit a certain point. But again, that point could literally be death. Just something to think about. And I know I 110% understand, as someone who has had family members that have gone through addictions, best friends that have gone through them, that it's not that easy as just hitting stop. But it's not something you're probably going to be able to stop immediately. But it is something where you may be able to seek help before you hit rock bottom. And maybe they'll help you to slowly wean yourself off of it. Or maybe your friends will be able to help you in getting that. Your friends will be able to encourage you to get that help or find that help for you or do something for you before you actually hit rock bottom. So the signs that I notice are, again, when you notice that you're hiding things from people, when you have a genuine sense of shame in what you're doing, when you lack confidence in yourself because of the decisions that you've made or the things you do, when you find that you are considerably happier when you are not doing the thing that you are telling yourself is not an addiction, and when you no longer find any of the things that you used to find fun anymore. When you don't find the things that you used to do on a regular basis to be fun or exciting, and you don't take part in them, and you see all these little areas of your life, all these little toys that you got or hobbies that you had that you just haven't taken part in a long time because the dopamine receptors have been desensitized to the point where there's only one thing you can do that will make you feel good. It may be time to consider, you know what, I'm not at rock bottom yet, but I'm going to be there, so I might as well act as if I am. And hopefully if you're a friend of that person, you act as if they are at rock bottom before they get there. Perhaps this will come off as pushy, as getting into people's business, as being an asshole. But at the end of the day, again, it's easy for me to say in hindsight, but in the two cases that I discussed, I much rather would have been considered an asshole by the person, and dare I say it, I much rather have lost them as a friend, but know that they are still out there in the world in some way, than for me to be here and not be able to share some of the good things of my life over the past 5 or 10 years with them. Anyway, see you all in the next video.